You look through the last decade, there was one team which had kept winning World Cups and major tournaments. The other team kept winning this particular trophy. This year, when India finally won their World Cup, which they'd waited for a decade, the tables turned and Australia have the Border-Gavaskar Trophy again. The series is always top billing, but it also tends to live up to the billing.
Yes, and when you sort of just go back a little and not get too immersed in every moment, team selection and all that, considering the kind of issues India had going to Australia, that 3-0 defeat, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Shami missing, Kuldeep Yadav missing. You know, if he was in Melbourne, Kuldeep Yadav, the tail may not have backed. In the end, you've got to say, well done Indian cricket, because the toughest rivalry sort of build up actually lived up to it. Although the scoreline is clearly Australia and Brisbane, if the match would have gone the full distance, it would have been even more glaring. But we still saw Australia getting worthy opponents, despite all the issues India had. So, which is, in a way, if you have to be kind and be positive, that's a good sign for Indian cricket.
But given everything you saw over these 45 days, 3-1 is still the fair scoreline for this series?
Yes, because eventually what played out was the quality of Australian bowling that remained good right through. Their batting being a little better than India. You can say that their batting didn't quite get as tough a bowling attack like the Indian batters got. But yes, and I think tactically, team selections and everything, yeah, that's an important point. Australia was way ahead. Mitchell Marsh dropped and Bo Webster coming in, Nathan McSweeney dropped, Constance coming in. India made some selection blunders.
Which is exactly where we begin the dissection of how the series turned, because Perth feels like such a long time ago now. In a way, did that Perth win almost hurt India, because it perhaps led the management to believe that that team balance was correct?
Yes, may have, because that was an amazing win, and that is where I think you've got to be really smart about, somebody saying, we're lucky with that win. I don't think the balance is quite right. But sometimes it also happens that you take the familiar path and, why change something, and that is a winning combination. But India was slowly and steadily going away from specialists, and the history of Test cricket will tell you that it's never worked. May have worked in one or two games where you have guys more for their secondary skill than their first one. That win just got India more committed to what was going to be a long-term, not such a good part to be in.
And what you say about the specialists becomes an even bigger point, because if you look at India's success in this format, where they've predominantly been the best Test side for 6 to 8 years, it was built on having a team which had specialists. This think tank clearly seems to be moving in a different direction. Do they need a rethink?
They should stop dead in their tracks, honestly. Because Jadeja, I can understand after that 70 in Brisbane, you could have him as a batter, because Indian batting was struggling and he's playing like a proper batter. So Jadeja's bowling becomes a bonus. But then after that, you had a Washington Sundar. You had a Nitish Kumar Reddy. He got 100, but he's again a guy very much in the mold of Washington Sundar, and Jadeja, in fact, is likely to be more consistent as a batter than Nitish Kumar Reddy. So India should stop right there. And history in the past and the couple of successes that India had, there wasn't one player like the three that we've just mentioned. There were Jadeja, you could consider maybe as a pure left-arm spinner, also in the right conditions, but they've got to stop very quickly and go back to having pure batters, pure bowlers, and if there is an additional skill, that's a bonus.
And it ends up being a bad look when you start picking two spinners immediately after the senior most spinner leaves the tour, and then you're left with two spinners on the tour, and then you go to an SCG, which is the greenest pitch of the series, still pick two spinners, and the second spinner ends up bowling 1 over, batting at number 8.
And even in that test match before the last test, you saw that Rohit Sharma is not very keen, or a captain who wants to go to his second spinner. Washington Sundar was always an afterthought. When all the resources were exhausted, they went to Washington Sundar. So clear message for all of us that he was there more for his batting. And that's not such a great call. And we saw what happened right towards the end. And when you look at his overall performance as a batter, Washington's, he's played he had 6 innings, score of 114 total, which includes 150. And that, was not a great selection at all.
When you think of how indecisive the selection in that sense has been, and the combination, does it feel like a spiraling effect after 46 all out? Did India, Gambhir, the management just somewhat start panicking? Because in the past, India have had collapses, but after 36 all out, they replaced Kohli with Jadeja. They didn't have much of an option, yes, but even if you think of South Africa, they lost a test by an innings, replaced Shardul Thakur with Mukesh Kumar. But this management seems to have gone more in the direction of trying to have deeper batting.
Yes, and Rahul Dravid as well was a big one on specialists and giving everybody a long rope. Now, the partnership has changed, and somewhere maybe the onus was more on Rohit Sharma to continue what has been a winning kind of approach. And if there was a new coach with new ideas, it's fair that he has one kind of motto of team selection. But the captain should have played a more sort of stronger role in team selection, because tactically the coach's biggest contribution is influencing the selection of the playing 11, because respectfully the chairman of selectors stays out a bit, he picks the squad. So the captain has to be somebody who should be able to overrule that, and clearly in this team management going this way, because there's always an illusory kind of support. You think, more batting depth. It worked on a few occasions, but the more depth India had, more matches they lost eventually.
The effect of going into most games with one bowler short, at times you felt they were two bowlers short. It told itself right at the end when, on the final day of the series, the one bowler who'd carried you through felt the burden of the overs he'd bowled. But speaking on the bowling, the last tour ended, Gabba 2021, with India feeling that sense of pride on their potentially 9th and 10th choice bowlers having delivered a famous victory. If you look at the makeup of this side right now, they were missing a Shami, yes, but the quality of India's 3rd and 4th pacers and even the identity at the moment seems to be a cause for concern.
Yeah, and it's actually snaked up on Indian cricket, because we were very happy with the kind of talent that we had, and there's still these names that come to our minds. But on the tour of Australia, Bumrah, Siraj, yes, and after that, just lack of experience. And in Test cricket, if you have experienced bowlers, if you have 3 or 4 seam bowlers, I can understand 1 or maybe 2 who would not quite have the experience. But India were carrying 2 or 3 right through the whole series. I mean, Harshit Rana got to one game where he really impressed. Second game, lackluster, dropped for the third game. Akash comes in, plays a couple of matches. Prasidh, Krishna comes in. So there was a lot of also, they didn't stick with one bowler. Akash had injury issues. But India need to now look at, their bowling. I just wonder whether India can also think of having a speedster. There are a couple who are out there. It's a good idea to sort of breed them into Test cricket rather than T20 cricket. So that's a focus area for India, to have some kind of support. But going in with 2 seam bowlers and 1 Nitish Kumar Reddy on a pitch like that was just crazy. I mean, you saw it became just a mockery when Bumrah wasn't there. I mean, 3 seamers, and they had to just bowl Prasidh, Krishna and Mohammed Siraj before Siraj had to eventually leave the field. So that is what you have to be really disappointed about, because what happens on the field is can't control it. But on that pitch, 2 spinners. But we've got to say, I think Washi played because of his batting.
The direction India take with their spinners, especially as far as away tours go. The next one is another series in England. You can imagine very similar storylines. Ashwin's out now. How do they go about their spinners? You'd imagine Kuldeep Yadav coming back becomes imperative.
Kuldeep Yadav in England may not be as effective as he would be in South Africa and Australia. India missed him in Australia, especially Melbourne, as I mentioned. One spinner, I think, is the way to go. I think there's plenty in Washington Sundar to be used as a spinner, and then his batting becomes an added advantage. They should never look at Washington Sundar and not be too convinced about him on a pitch like this, but still play him because he can bat a bit. That's terrible. That's a recipe for disaster. And if there is likely to be spin for maybe one spinner, then you decide between Washi and Jadeja. I think Washington Sundar at this stage is a better bowler, and then batting is his thing. But Jadeja, as his career has evolved, has become a very good batter, and his bowling skills or effect has died down a little bit. So India have to keep looking out for quality seamers. and because they can't be playing two spinners.
And since we're talking around all-rounders, Nitish Kumar Reddy, for India to develop his bowling becomes important, but how do they go about doing that?
It's not going to be easy. I mean, he's got the fundamentals, so that's a long journey for him to become even a bit like a, say, Bo Webster, who looked good as a bowler. That's going to be a headache now for India because he's played the kind of innings that you don't see too many people playing. I mean, his innings, quality-wise, was the best innings an Indian batter played in that series. It was not an attacking, taking the bowlers on kind of inning. He showed every facet of his batting, but after that there were 3 failures. So you wonder where it's going, and let's hope that it's not just a one innings wonder that we see from him, but he is going to give India some headache because there's some serious batting talent there. But see how that pans out.
Let's move to the specialist batters now, and we'll save 2 of them for later because their conversation is more than just their batting. But when you look at the others, let's go one by one. Yashasvi, Jaiswal, how do you rate this tour on the whole? 3 quality knocks, a lot of other low scores.
But tremendous. When the pitch changed at Perth, he made the most of it. When he got run out on 80, I think he would have got another big 100 there for a guy who's gone there for the first time. He's also a T20 and 50 overs cricketer to show those qualities. Incredible, and also overcoming the Mitchell Starc problem with that swinging ball. So he was really the greatest news to come through, top of the order against that kind of an attack on helpful pitches. To have 2 scores of 80 and 160 was tremendous. So Yashasvi Jaiswal, big gain for India.
His opening partner for at least most of the series, KL Rahul, a series very typical of KL Rahul's career?
Yes, and I think now we know what KL Rahul is about. I mean, we were talking about him being India's best batter at the start of the series. I mean, he looked so compact, so good. Then got that 80 in Brisbane as well, and we thought, this could be a slightly, it might just change his career in the right direction. But then you saw the failures again. But I don't see him being left out for England, considering that India still are looking for an opener. They don't want to go to Ishwaran. And KL Rahul, the last time he was there, played well. So I see that opening combination continuing, unless Rohit Sharma comes in and throws a spanner in the works.
Do you give any benefit of doubt to Rahul's overall? I know the average of 30 on the whole looks low, but for the first 3 tests, when he had a stable position, he was averaging close to 45.
Yes, and considering that India don't have too many exciting options within the guys who played, they didn't try Ishwaran, they didn't try Sarfaraz Khan, so who knows? Yes, within the kind of, at the moment, it's not like Indian batting, everyone is at the top of the game. They don't see batting riches unless you give opportunities. So it makes sense, despite his track record, to have KL Rahul as your starting opener in England.
All right. Next up, Shubman Gill. What is the remedy for what is proving to be overseas misery, everything after Gabba 2021?
I think somewhere, they are living in a culture where a lot of important people in the dressing room would be suggesting, don't defend too much. And because there was life in most pitches here, it would have been an advice that there'll be one ball that will get you, try to put the bowler off. And in this era of T20, 50 overs cricket, and Shubman Gill has the big game. So when he got out in the fashion that he did in the second innings, the shot that he plays. But that is a difficult one to overcome. 20s and 30s is a good sign. It means he can start off well in the toughest period. He has to go one way. And he has done that. If you remember when he got that 100 against England, when his place was on the line, he played, there was grit in the way he played. And I think if you can survive the first 45 minutes, 1 hour with a new ball, you have a pretty decent defense. And that is something that I was worried about. It's just about then buckling in and just being that kind of a guy like a Virat Kohli who doesn't want to get out.
Okay, so if Gill was an example of someone who was probably being told don't defend too much, let's move to the example of someone who might have been told don't attack too much, because we saw Rishabh Pant and what the unhinged Rishabh Pant could do in the final innings. Does that have to be the biggest lesson for anyone involved with the Indian Test setup? Let Rishabh Pant be?
Yes, certain players you have to leave them alone, not everyone. And Rishabh Pant clearly is one of those guys. And we saw, what he did. Had he lasted 25, 30 balls more, India would have won the Test match because he would have got maybe another sort of 40, 50 runs. Yeah, lesson learned. And maybe Rishabh Pant also needs to be a little concerned about consistency, because there was just that one innings right at the end. Before this, in his career, we talk about the 89 not out at Brisbane, there was a 90 just before that. So he's been far more consistent than he was in this series. So that is something maybe he can introspect on.
All right. The conversation around the remaining batters is something that takes us into the road ahead for Indian cricket. But before we get there, as a final, we can't put a stop as far as this series is concerned without, for one last time, hailing the summer of Jasprit Bumrah. Cruel irony almost, Sanjay, that the man who carried the team on his back saw his back broken by the end of it.
Yes, and unfortunate, and I'm sure if there was even the smallest chance of him being able to bowl, he would have come in and bowled maybe a 4-over spell. Would have got 3 wickets or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is where, you know, Test cricket is so important for people like Bumrah to leave a legacy, get the attention of the world, the respect of the world. A bowler without a weakness is what we are looking at him as now, and that is the ultimate sort of compliment or observation of a great performer. No weakness. The closest that came to Bumrah was Richard Hadley. When he played for a weak bowling attack, he used to do exactly the same. Master of his trade. And interesting that depending on the pitch, that's the bowler he becomes. Sam Constas hit him for all those runs when the balls were up. Next innings, you could see the aggressive side of Bumrah. Not one ball was pitched up, short of length the speed and got up, got the man. So that is Bumrah. You can't call him an outswing bowler or an in-swing bowler or a swing bowler or a seam bowler. He's bowler for the moment, depending on the batter and the pitch.
It is the series that has cemented Jasprit Bumrah's spot in the conversation of all-time great fast bowlers. Has it also, what has it done as far as the conversation around India's next Test captain is concerned? Because at some point in the future, we don't know if it's immediately or the near future, it is going to happen. Is Jasprit Bumrah India's next Test captain?
It's a no-brainer for me. The next Test series is going to be in England, so more of the same, and Bumrah has to be a Test captain. I don't think Rohit Sharma has done enough as a batter, and considering the loss to New Zealand as well at home and here, plus he opted out from that playing 11 because he thought he didn't fit in because of his form. So what's going to sort of get him to think differently, that I'm in form now and I'm opting in. So there are too many uncertainties around him, and Bumrah is at the top of his game, and there's nothing out there that we saw where he doesn't seem to have captaincy, you know, material. No brainer for me. He has to be India's Test captain, and when he's unfit or missing anything, we'll think about, you know, who's going to be the right one.
So you don't think that's an important enough consideration?
No.
Now if he were to be missing a certain number of Test matches?
No. See, for example, there's so much of international cricket happening, so much. You have to pick out the series that matter. The next one, India-England, is going to be another interesting one. Bumrah is your captain. And after that, if there is some bilateral series and he's feeling a little tired, he need not play that series, and you can have somebody else. And if it's at home, it's much easier to lead sides when you're in India. He doesn't have to captain 50 overs cricket, you know, after Rohit Sharma. You just pick out, let's talk Test cricket only at the moment. Just pick out those marquee series and you'll know which is the important one. When you go to South Africa, when you go to Australia, England, New Zealand, Bumrah is your Test captain.
So in that case, the choice of vice captain also becomes important, because we're imagining a scenario where your full-time captain is someone who's rested for a few series. So then who's the vice captain in this setup from whoever you see?
I have no idea. But I know who shouldn't be, and I won't say it, but there are some obvious guys that you wouldn't want. The first thing you want is that vice captain to walk into the team on his own performances. And that is the vice captain, and I think you'll get that person slowly. But for the moment, you're focusing on the England series, and you're expecting Bumrah to be fit, and he becomes your captain. I think there was some talk about Shubman Gill coming to Australia in that squad as a vice captain. And look how things have changed. Bumrah, thankfully, because Rohit Sharma was missing the first Test, was made the captain, and look where Gill's career is now currently. So the first thing is you've got to be in that team on merit as an individual, just like Anil Kumble was when he got the captaincy.
So if it has to be that way, and you want to identify someone who's not approaching the end of their career, Rishabh Pant, the candidate?
I really, for once, have no answer. I've got nothing. As Chandler Bing would say, I got nothing. But I know for sure that Bumrah is your captain for the next series. And it things, happen in cricket organically. A new term that people use, and you'll be amazed how things become simpler as you just go through, the next few matches of the next few series, test series.
All right, let's address the giants in the dressing room then. You've done enough and more dissection.
One bigger giant than the other. Huh?
Yes, that has become quite clear.
Yeah, and that is very important. One is a real giant when you're talking about test cricket.
Yes.
We talk about white ball cricket.
We've made it a point to keep those videos at the top of our carousel.
And many people are now starting to say that. It's really unfair on Virat Kohli that is bracketed with Rohit Sharma, the test batter.
Correct. So without bracketing them together, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, all the dissection is done. Is it time to move on, or do India persist with one or both?
Rohit Sharma's case is slightly more easy. He's opted out on form, and it's not like India is going to play Bangladesh at home, where things are going to get easier. The next challenge is going to be England. It will be that same line outside the off-stump, and Rohit Sharma will have to improve his defense. His counter-attacking game is not working, so that's a problem. And that is a headache for the chairman of selectors, and he's got to keep it simple and forget about the effect it will have with those decisions. He's got to think, okay, Rohit Sharma, we saw him bat here. His defense was getting breached in India on Indian pitches. So that's a serious cause for concern. I think Rahul, Jaiswal is a better opening stand looking at Rohit Sharma's form. But there are slots vacant down the line, and that has happened in Indian cricket forever. After a foreign trip, suddenly batting spots open up. So who knows? But if at all, Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli as well are in that team, and Virat Kohli should be, in my mind. I think there should be a little better preparation for Virat Kohli, and it can't be a Ranji Trophy game here. Has to be, going out there well in time, playing some serious county cricket. And then, just because it's an iconic figure, you can't have a repeat of what happened in Australia. If you see Virat Kohli also not being able to overcome his problems, you can give a 2 test match guarantee, and we'll see whether there is any possibility of that tremendous mind of his, the strong mind, to make something different happen this time.
The preparation you speak of would appear to be difficult on the calendar, because while the English county season does begin, it does happen to clash with an IPL.
But there's still a few days, because this series starts
They'll have a
late.
couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that should be enough. And if Virat Kohli is serious about making a statement and leaving a legacy behind, certain sacrifices need to be made, and we'll see. And that is the key word actually, whether both these senior batters are willing to make the sacrifices needed to have a longer test career, continue on their test journey, because Virat Kohli is clearly giving himself the best chance to succeed at this stage. I don't think Rohit Sharma is making enough sacrifices to have one last final burst. The kind of sacrifices Rahul Dravid made at the end of his career, Tendulkar as well, with regards to fitness and just the preparation.
While we're on the conversation of preparation, it was a part of Gautam Gambhir's final address in the press conference he gave after the final test, where he brought up domestic cricket and players needing to go there. But what message do domestic players get when they observe a tour where there were 2 proven performers from domestic cricket who didn't get a single look, who weren't even considered for selection through this series?
And that was my principle, when we had that chat before the first test. I said that it shouldn't be as straightforward decision with Sarfaraz Khan taken away and Rahul put in there. I think there was a lot of preemption. A lot of people were playing God with Abhimanyu Ishwaran, watching him in a warm-up game and thinking that he's not going to be getting runs. I think that's not a good way to look at things, because cricket springs you surprises. There was Virendra Sehwag batting down in number 5 and 6 and then opening at the test level and becoming one of India's greatest test opener. Plus, even if a Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma get run on Indian pitches and Ranji Trophy, England is going to be a completely different challenge. So I want to see them, if they're serious about it, to be out there, and then the selectors watch and they see something happening, something's changed, and there is a possibility that we'll see a different performance.
With that in mind, that your performances in India don't necessarily translate to what will succeed in England. What is the outlook the selectors need to have when they are identifying the right mix for England?
See, during our times as well, when we used to play domestic cricket, we used to see domestic players, guys who were getting thousands of runs. But just watching the technique, we knew that they were going to be good on Indian pitches, not so good away. So that is what selectors' job is. And pick guys who are getting runs, because at some stage you've got to reward people. Sarfaraz Khan, for example, was rewarded for his tremendous record at the first class level. He got 350s and 150 and got out terribly in the next test. But then he was completely dumped. I don't think that's quite right. Even if you feel that, Sarfaraz Khan might not succeed on these kind of pitches, what if he had found a way to get runs, with the third man being his main scoring area? I mean, it was a revelation how he played against England. So let's not try and play God too much. Maybe just watch a little bit, be concerned about how they'll shape up at the highest level. But you've got to reward people who've got runs.
Lots to ponder for Indian cricket. There's about 6 months till the next test assignment. Let's see which way it goes. Final rapid fire on the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. What will you remember this edition the most for?
Bumrah becoming one of the all-time greats in a very short span of time. Pat Cummins as a leader, delighted that Australian cricket has gone back to those days when they ruled the world in the way by setting an example. They were tactically brilliant, they were mean, and their batting was sometimes shambolic, but despite that, going and winning the game, and few individual performances here and there. But that is the big takeaway for me. The two, fast bowlers, the one from either side.
What can cricket on the whole learn from this series?
If you have a greater bowling attack, you will always have an advantage, like Australia did. And their batting also was, even on the final day, I'm sure they were worried whether they'll get 160, even with Bumrah not being there, and Prasidh Krishna got 3 wickets. But the team that has the better bowling attack tends to have an upper hand.
All right. From Perth all the way to Sydney, it's been a pleasure having your company.
Yeah,
it's been a long series.
Yeah.
It's been fun. I'm sure we won't miss the 5 a.m. alarm clocks.